Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie. I'm a book-loving, notebook-hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. And this is the Get Literate podcast. On this podcast, we explore the power of leading literate lives. We talk all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to make our lives better. And no matter what better means to you, the pages inside books and notebooks can help us get there. So, each week, we'll mix together books, notebooks, mindful practices, and creativity to cultivate a life we love. Now, grab a notebook and your TBR list, and let's get literate. Hey everyone, Stephanie here, and welcome to another episode of the Get Literate podcast. Happy March, everyone. You know, I love to use the calendar to guide my reading and my writing life, and this month is no exception. So today, starting off a March series of podcast episodes, we are going to celebrate all things middle grade March. Now, I'm not entirely sure where that phrase came from, when it started, or who started it, but I am sure that I celebrate it every year. Now, you likely know, if you've been listening for a while, that I teach children's literature at my local university. So I read a lot of kid books, picture books, middle grade novels, young adult, all of it. But middle grade is my happy place. Even if I wasn't a children's literature professor, I know that I would still make room in my reading life for reading middle grade novels. And I've really got three main reasons. Number one, these books just speak to my inner child. You can't not read a middle grade book without thinking of an earlier version of you. You just can't. It gives you a new perspective. It gives you a new way of thinking about yourself or the world. And sometimes it helps you feel better. Number two, middle grade books and young adult books for the stage of life that I am in, they offer very unique parenting insights. Sure, I could learn what teenagers are thinking and feeling by going to a nonfiction parenting book and figuring out my next best move. But I know I gain much more insight. Even though I was a teenager myself long ago, I gain much more insight by reading middle grade books and young adult books and being remembered of what that stage of life feels like so that I can better support my kids and the students I work with. And number three, I think reading middle grade novels just helps us build a love of reading for all. I get asked all the time, what's the number one thing I can do to make sure that my child is a reader? You know what the number one thing you can do is? Read. Read yourself and read publicly and in front of your child and talk about books. And if you do that, your child will have a beautiful role model to become a reader, him or herself. But specifically, if you are reading the books that you know your children might want to read, that helps you connect with them on a whole nother level. It helps you connect with any child on a whole nother level. And especially if you're an educator like me, that's essential. But beyond that, adults do lots of things that appeal to their inner child. And I'm not sure why reading middle grade books and picture books and kid lit isn't one of them as readily, right? So think about it. Adults still go get an ice cream cone. Adults still go to the drive-in movie theaters like you did when you were a kid. And think about the pickleball rage right now. Adults are still playing in physical games. Think of all the adult softball leagues that I know exist out there. So adults are still seeking to satisfy that inner child a bit, and that can apply to our reading life too. Just because we are big kids, just because we are big adults, doesn't mean that we wouldn't enjoy a really great middle grade novel. Not to mention, if all of those other reasons haven't appealed to you yet, I know if you are a numbers person, maybe this will. Middle grade novels are easy for adults to read, and therefore we can get a great deal of reading done and a great deal of satisfaction when we finish a book quickly, right? We can finish middle grade novels much faster than we can one of our adult novels. And so that can help us feel good about accomplishing some more reading, adding it to our reading log or our Goodreads shelf. So either way, if you're a numbers person or if you're more thinking of, the rationale for why we should do this kind of reading, I'm here today to convince you that you need to bring some middle grade books into your reading life and those around you as well. So I'm going to share a collection of middle grade novels that are sure to delight you as an adult reader, your middle child, inner child, and all of the middle graders around you. So here's how I've organized it. First, I want to share my 3 favorite middle grade-ish novels from when I was a kid. And yes, they are still relevant now, which brings me great joy. Then I'm going to talk about my all-around top favorite recommendations, whether I know the child or not. If someone says, what are your favorite middle grade novels to connect to? These are the titles that I have. I'm also going to share a couple of my favorite middle grade novelists and 3 books that are on my middle grade TBR stack in March. So I've got a nice collection for you, something sure to please everyone. So here we go. Let's think back. What were my favorite middle grade-ish novels when I was a kid? I've got 3 that instantly come to mind. 3 books by 2 authors because I happened to love Judy Blume growing up. Right, so this book is actually getting a lot of press right now because it is going to be turned into a movie. But the book I'm thinking about is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. This book was a game changer for me. Now, I always approach books in my childhood as expectations that I was going to learn from them or they were going to touch my heart. Like I expected books to serve a purpose for me ever since Grover told me it should with the monster at the end of this book. But this book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. This book I read at such an important time that to see a character who was almost 12, who acted a little bit like me, right? Maybe I didn't move and have a new school and new friends to fit into, but she got what being a middle grader was like. She got how hard it can be to fit in with friends and what happens within a whole bunch of girls. And so in this book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Margaret, along with some new friends, form a secret club to talk about private things like boys and bras and getting their first periods and things that were not talked about in books before. Like I said, it was a game changer. Now, Margaret's really happy to belong in this book and in this club, but there are some underlying threads of things that she's not quite fitting in and that she's questioning. And mainly that's religion, right? She doesn't really have a religion. She doesn't go to the Jewish community center like some of her friends, but she does feel like she has her own relationship with God and that she can talk to God about everything, right? The title is, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. This book is funny. It is real. It is relatable. Definitely. And you just feel like you're right there with Margaret. And that's the hallmark of a middle grade novel, right? We want kids to feel like they're not alone, that there are characters that are like them and not like them, and both have things to offer. So Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is usually my number 1 middle grade pick from my own childhood. Now, up next is one that I know many of you are going to agree with me with. And not only that, it's been reimagined recently. So this book is still very relevant today. I should say this series. Do you know which one I'm going to say? The Babysitter's Club. Specifically, the very first book that started it all, Christie's Great Idea by Anne M. Martin. Oh, The Babysitter's Club. I could not get enough of these books. I had every single one of them. I can vividly remember my grandmother bringing me to the bookstore in the mall to get the newest ones as soon as it came out. And I would literally be reading the book, walking out of the mall. There was actually a time where I ran into the telephone booth Back when there were telephone booths in the mall, I just veered off my course because I was too interested in the Babysitters Club. I adored this series. And in this book, particular, the kickoff book, we learn about what the Babysitters Club is. Christy has a great idea and has 3 friends, Claudia, Stacy, and Marianne, join her in this great idea. All of them love taking care of kids. They love babysitting. And they thought, why not put our heads together in a club where parents can call us at certain times, get all of us top babysitters in one room, and then we can figure out who can take on the job and babysit. It was a dream come true, right? It was a business, it was a friendship club, and they were doing what they loved. But of course, there's problems along the way, like crank calls and 2-year-olds with tantrums and wild pets, parents who don't always tell the truth, and then even some drama between the friends themselves. But these friends are friends, and they are friends for life, and the Babysitters Club just sticks through it all, through thick and thin. I loved this series, and I was even happier to see that these books in their entirety, so the novels, are still available. But we also have the beautiful graphic novel series by Raina Telgemeier that brings the Babysitters Club to life in graphic form. Any way you want Babysitters Club, you can get it. I'm sad to say that I do not have my Babysitters Club series. I did not hang on to it when I was a kid, but I've started ordering them again. So I do have a couple that are sitting on my shelf along with their graphic novel counterparts. So the Babysitters Club is perfect for the middle grader in your life. And if they prefer novels or graphic novels, we've got you covered. Now, my third book that I think of when I think of a book that I loved as a child was actually not hard for me to think of, but I kept getting confused because I loved this book as a teacher in my first 4th grade classroom as well. But this book was one that was published back in 1972 and was one that I enjoyed as a child as well. And that's Tales of a 4th Grade Nothing, again by Judy Blume. I adored Judy Blume. And this book is all about Peter and his little brother, Fudge. So they have some typical sibling relationships, right? Fudge, as a little brother, does all the little brother things, like throw temper tantrums in public and put mashed potatoes on the wall or try to fly. He's always getting into trouble, right? He's almost 3 years old and it shows. And Peter, a 4th grader, really has just had it up to here with all of his antics. So this book outlines all of those sibling relationships, all of those antics, and how Peter can figure out how to get his parents to pay attention to him for a change. Now, growing up, I did not have siblings. My brothers did not come along until I was 10 and 13. So I couldn't really relate to this sibling rivalry and the sibling drama inside Tales of 4th Grade Nothing, but I wanted it. I wanted to have those little people around me. I think that's why I loved babysitting so much. So Tales of a 4th Grade Nothing gave me a different view into what a family with siblings that are close in age must be like for you. And I loved it. And then again, I read it when I had my own 4th grade classroom, and my kids loved it then too. I'd say this one is still going strong. It's still got a 4.11 rating on Goodreads with almost 140,000 ratings. It's an oldie, but a goodie. Okay, so there were 3 of my favorites. I want to talk now about the books that I tend to recommend whenever someone asks me for a middle grade novel. So even if I don't know the child, these are the books that I know they are likely going to find something inside of them that is going to hook them and connect them to the book as a reader. So always, the first one that comes to mind, at least for the last couple of years since it was published, is Anne Braden's The Benefits of Being an Octopus. This book is middle grade perfection. It's about 7th grader Zoe, so it is nearing the other side, I guess you would say, of a middle grade novel. And Zoe has a lot going on. Her mom is a single mom taking care of her and her younger siblings, and Zoe shares a lot of that caretaking And Zoe's mom doesn't always appreciate all that Zoe does. And Zoe's mom's boyfriend doesn't always appreciate it as well. So Zoe's having a hard time. She tries to stay quiet. She does have one friend, but of course that friend has her own middle grade issues, and they just try to keep under the radar because they're not like the other rich kids at the school. Now, Zoe thinks that everything in her life would be much easier if she were just an octopus. 8 arms to do 8 things as once. An incredible camouflage ability and steady, unblinking vision with powerful protective defenses. This is what had me at this book, because Zoe as a middle grader might wish for it, but I know all of us adults and parents often wish for it too. So this book shares all of Zoe's struggles, and it shares what happens when Zoe actually starts to turn things around. With the help of a teacher, with the help of a debate club, she starts to see her world a little bit differently, and she starts to see that if she just has the courage to speak up, the courage to do something or say something different, then everything might change. It's got so much packed into this middle grade novel. And even though the main character is a girl, I know that everybody of any gender here will be able to see themselves in some of the situations that Zoe is exploring. So that's The Benefits of Being an Octopus by Anne Braden. Now, another book that is always on my tried and true list is Lucky Broken Girl by Ruth Baer. Do you know it? It's a beautiful book. The cover is beautiful with some beautiful flowers on it. And it's actually based on Ruth's story. And I've talked about it before in the podcast, but I think it was worth mentioning again here. So Ruthie comes to America from Cuba, and she's starting to feel like she's finally starting to belong. But then something happens. They get into an accident. Ruthie and her family get into an accident in her father's new car, and it's pretty bad. She has to lie in a body cast for months upon months. You can imagine as a middle grader that feels like the end of the world. And Ruthie's mad and frustrated and depressed, and rightfully so. But as she spends all of that time at home, all of that time immobile, she has some time to think, right? And she realizes that all sorts of interesting people are actually coming through her door. They've got their own stories. They've got their own gifts. They've got their own ways to make Ruthie feel less alone and less afraid, which is going to be critical in not only recovering from this accident and this body cast that she's in, but in finding who she wants to be on the other side of it. It's a beautiful book. My daughter and I listened to the audio, and the author is the narrator, which is just, it's like icing on the cake when you're listening to a book. So that's Lucky Broken Girl by Ruth Baer. Now, I also want to talk about one of my top favorites, which is Wish Tree by Katherine Applegate. I love Wish Tree so much that I have Wish Tree necklaces and Wish Tree earrings and Wish Tree stickers, because I just adore the concept. Now, the neat thing about Wish Tree is that it is actually told from the perspective of an oak tree named Red. Red is the neighborhood wish tree, which is a tree where people actually come to write their wishes on pieces of cloth and then tie them to Red's branches. It's a big event in the neighborhood, and Red has an important job. Now, because of this, you can imagine that Red has seen it all. He has seen people come to the tree with their very real wishes, their very real hopes and dreams and sorrows and challenging situations that they want to overcome. And Red has thought he has saw everything until a new family moves in next door. Not everyone in this neighborhood is very welcoming to this new family. And Red's realizing that its existence matters and what's going to happen to this family. Now, I won't say much more. I'm just going to say that you need to read it. You didn't know you needed to read a book that was written from the point of view of a tree, but it's this unexpected point of view that lets you see the world and people and people's behavior a little bit differently than maybe you did before. And then it prompts you to think, what would you do? So that's Wish Tree. Definitely, please, please, please read that one. Now, I also want to share Sticky Notes. This is one that I think is a little lesser known. Many people, when I talk about the middle grade books I love, they've heard of Wish Tree before. They've heard of the benefits of being an octopus, but they haven't heard of Sticky Notes. And this is Sticky Notes by Diane Tuchel. This book is all about Foster. Foster is 10 years old, and he likes all the typical 10-year-old things: toy soldiers, tadpole hunting, school, going to the beach, and hanging out with his dad. But lately, for some reason, his dad's appearance, no, not his appearance, his dad's demeanor is changing. And all of the stories that he used to tell just haven't been so great anymore. Sometimes they're not the same stories, and sometimes he just repeats the same stories, and he just doesn't seem to remember things like he used to. His mom even has to put sticky notes on the mirror and sticky notes all over the house to remember to do basic things. Now, this develops and progresses, and eventually we realize that Foster's dad has early onset Alzheimer's, something that is impacting millions upon millions of people in the world. And this book tells the story of what that feels like from the perspective of a 10-year-old. Now, you might be thinking, Stephanie, that's heavy. This is middle grade novels. These should be light and fun and engaging, and they are. This still has a very light childhood touch, but it does talk about real things that middle graders might be going through. And given the statistics for Alzheimer's and dementia in our country, chances are there are kids out there that need this book. So that's Sticky Notes by Diane Tuchel. Now, I also have Front Desk by Kelly Yang. I love this book, and there actually are more in the series if you love this book as well. But Front Desk by Kelly Yang is about Mia Tang. And Mia Tang has a lot of secrets. Secret number one, she lives in a motel, not a house, and her immigrant parents are cleaning those rooms in order to survive. Number two, her parents are hiding immigrants in that very motel because if not, they're not quite sure what will happen to them. And number three, she wants to be a writer. But how can she when her parents think that sticking to math and science is the way to go because English isn't her first language? Now, these three secrets hook readers in. The stories we learn about the immigrant experience, about the immigrants that are in hiding and why, and the treatment of them, but also the hopefulness of Mia to actually do something about this. And not only do something about it, but to do it by using the talents she wants to grow in herself, which is writing. So this is a book about family. It is a book about persevering through challenging times. It's a book about resilience and just what's the word I want to say? Thinking outside of the box of what you can do when you really want to go after your dreams. It is so uplifting, very informative, and is another perfect middle grade novel. So that's Front Desk by Kelly Yang. Now, I do want to talk about one more book, and then I will just throw in a couple of titles for you to think about. But the last book I want to share, that I absolutely loved, is Piecing Me Together by Renee Watson. And this, again, might be moving towards the YA end of middle grade reading. But this is a book about a poor teenage girl who is trying everything she can to just succeed. And her mom has ingrained in her that she has to take every opportunity she can to get out of this neighborhood and put her life on a different track. And she is doing it. She got a scholarship to go to a mostly white private school and even an opportunity to go to additional test prep opportunities to help her get ahead. But as she learns, some of those opportunities aren't really all that helpful. And they may actually be more demeaning than they are helpful at all. She ends up getting an invitation to this place called Women to Women, which is a mentorship program for, in quotes, at-risk girls. It's for Black girls from bad neighborhoods, as she says. And she doesn't like how it frames her situation, right? So this story is about finding a new way, but finding a new way in a way that feels good and feels appropriate and is not demeaning. It's got so much in it. And I think the piece that I haven't said yet that you really won't find in any summary or publisher's description is her use of art and collage in order to piece herself together. It's such an added delight in this book. I had no idea this kind of art existed. I went down a rabbit hole through Google after I did so and ended up trying a few things for myself. This book was a catalyst. It was a book that made you think, and then it was a book that made you think forward. Lots on friendship, on race, on privilege, on identity. So again, it's definitely moving in more of the YA direction, but it is one that I definitely wanted to mention. Now, honestly, I could just keep going and going and going. I haven't even mentioned Because of Mr. Terrupt by Rob Bouyer. I haven't mentioned The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise yet. I haven't mentioned so many additional books, but when the top of mind books come, when someone asks that question, those are the books I described that I just really wanted you to know more about. But because there are more out there, I want to quickly run through some middle grade authors that are my definite go-to authors beyond those that I have shared here, and also including them. So top middle grade novel author that I think of when I think of middle grade is Anne Braden. I already shared the benefits of being an octopus, but if you haven't read The Flight of the Puffin or Opinions and Opossums, those are books that are high on my list of recommendations too. And yes, you can see the theme in the books, from an octopus to a puffin to an opossum, and all of them are absolutely amazing. I also recommend Ellie Swartz. I loved her book, Finding Perfect, but there are so many more that I could recommend as well. Give and Take, Dear Student, Smart Cookie, Hidden Truths, so many amazing middle grade novels that Ellie Swartz has gifted to the world. Now, I mentioned Renee Watson's book, Piecing Me Together, but I wanted to talk about a couple of her true middle grade top titles. So if you haven't read Ways to Grow Love, Ways to Make Sunshine, Ways to Share Joy, definitely read that trio of books. But she also has Some Places More Than Others and Love is a Revolution if you are looking to go a bit more young adult. Now, I also, of course, have to mention Kate DiCamillo. Love her. Gotten to see her in person a couple of times. Such an inspiration to my own writing life and the writing life of my students. Kate DiCamillo has written prolifically. So we've got The Tiger Rising, Raimi Nightingale, one of my favorites, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, one that I adored reading with my kids, The Tale of Despero, Because of Winn-Dixie. Oh, who doesn't love that Because of Winn-Dixie? And the early middle grade series with a beloved pig, Mercy and Watson. So if you're unsure of which middle grade books to go to, you can start with the titles I've shared, but you might just start with these authors because these are some of my middle grade favorites. Okay, I've got one more section of books to share with you, and those are the 3 newest releases that are on my personal TBR. I cannot wait to get to these books. First up is Finally Seen by Kelly Yang. Yes, you know, I loved her from the front desk, and I cannot wait to get this. So let me read what the publisher has written for you, since this is a book that is on my TBR. From the New York Times bestselling author of Front Desk comes a gripping middle grade novel about a young girl who leaves China to live with her parents and sister after 5 years apart, and learns about family, friendship, and the power of finally being seen. And it continues. My sister got to grow up with my parents. Me, I grew up with postcards from my parents. When 10-year-old Lena Gao steps off the plane in Los Angeles, it's her first time in America and the first time seeing her parents and her little sister in 5 years. She's been waiting for this moment every day while she lived with her grandmother in Beijing, getting teased by kids at school who called her the left behind girl. Finally, her parents are ready for her to join them in their fabulous life in America. Except it's not exactly like what was in the postcards. Number one, school's a lot harder than she thought. When she mispronounces some words in English on the first day, she decides she just simply won't talk ever again. Number two, her chatty little sister has no problem with English and seems to do everything better than Lena, including knowing exactly the way to her parents' hearts. And number three, they live in an apartment, not a house like in Mom's letters, and they owe a lot of back rent from the pandemic. And Mom's plan to pay it back sounds more like a hobby than a moneymaker. As she reckons with her hurt, Lena tries to keep a lid on her feelings, both at home and at school. When her teacher starts facing challenges for her latest book selection, a book that deeply resonates with Lena, it will take all of Lena's courage and resilience to get over her fear in order to choose a future where she's finally seen. Oh, doesn't that sound wonderful? That's Finally Seen by Kelly Yang. Now, number two is You Are Here, Connecting Flights by Ellen O. And Ellen is actually the editor because this is a collection of stories written by Linda Sue Park, Aaron and Trotta Kelly, Grace Lynn, Tracy Chi, Mike Chen, Meredith Ireland, and many, many more. So let me tell you about You Are Here, Connecting Flights. An incident at a TSA security check points slow chaos and rumors, creating a chain of events that impacts 12 young Asian Americans in a crowded and restless airport. As their disrupted journeys crisscross and collide, they encounter fellow travelers, some helpful, some hostile, as they discover the challenges of friendship, the power of courage, the importance of the right word at the right time, and the unexpected significance of a blue Stratocaster electric guitar. 12 powerhouse Asian American authors explore themes of identity and belonging in the entwined experiences of young people whose family roots may extend to East and Southeast Asia, but who are themselves distinctly American. I love books that feature collections of stories and tell stories from different perspectives, so I knew that I would love Connecting Flights. I mean, think about that. In Get Literate, a couple of months back, we explored the idea of sonder. And sonder means that we are all connected in ways that we don't know. So looking up at the sky and seeing the airplane overhead, you're now part of that story, and vice versa. It's such a cool idea. And so this book, taking place in an airport and seeing all the connections that happen to us, connections that we maybe didn't know could exist, that is something that I know I'm going to enjoy reading about. So that's You Are Here, Connecting Flights by Ellen O. Now, the last one, I don't want to say that I saved the best for last, but I definitely saved the one I am most excited for. And this book is Lasagna Means I Love You by Kate O'Shaughnessy. Here's the setup. What are the essential ingredients that make a family? 11-year-old Mo is making up her own recipe. Nan was all the family Mo ever needed. But suddenly, she's gone. And Mo finds herself in foster care after her uncle decides she's not worth sticking around for. Nan left her a notebook and advised her to get a hobby, like ferret racing or palm reading. But how could a hobby fix anything in her newly topsy-turvy life? But then Mo finds a handmade cookbook filled with someone else's family recipes. Even though Nan never cooked, Mo can't tear her eyes away. Not so much from the recipes, but from the stories attached to them. Though, when she makes herself a pot of soup, it is every bit as comforting as the recipe notes said. Soon Mo finds herself asking everyone she meets for their family recipes, teaching herself to make them. collecting the stories behind them, and even building a website to share them. And okay, secretly hoping that a long lost relative will find her and give her family recipes of her own. But when everything starts to unravel again, Mo realizes that if she wants a family recipe or a real family, she's going to have to make it up herself. Oh, I love everything about this. And the good news for us is that it was just published on February 21st in 2023, so we can get our hands on it now. The ideas behind it, especially that there is a notebook involved and a notebook that's going to transform Mo's life in some way, that is my kind of story. And the fact that it's in a middle grade novel just makes me even more excited. So I can't wait for this one. This one is Lasagna Means I Love You by Kate O'Shaughnessy. Okay, we spent a good chunk of time talking about all things middle grade, and honestly, all things middle grade just puts me in a good mood. They are my happy places, and I know that middle grade books could be a happy place in your reading life too. But before we go, I do want to tell you about something really fun that we are doing inside my Get Literate Patreon community. Each month, we pick a new theme, and this month we have flipped the theme upside down along with all of our activities around it, and we are exploring the Japanese concept of tsundoku. Tsundoku means reading material that piles up, and this month, inside of our community, we are happily fighting back. So we are pledging throughout the month of March to read our own shelves, to delay getting new books, to delay borrowing new books, and actually giving our attention to the books that we have. So I know books are patient, but some of them have been waiting a long time. So we are pledging to read our shelves. We have a literary society meeting planned where we're going to bring our favorite selections from our shelves to an alternative book club. We have read with me and write with me sessions where we're going to grab the book off of our shelf that we've been waiting to read, and we're just going to show up together in a really fun virtual space, and we're going to read it. And even though we're talking mainly about our books that can pile up, you know, I love my notebooks. Those can pile up too. So we do have some write with me sessions planned where we can come together and celebrate notebooking, share a few prompts, and take some time on the page. We also have some other challenges like tackling the other things in our lives that pile up, like those projects that we say we're going to get to, but we don't. So we've got a lot of fun going on inside of the community. Some of that involves some middle grade novels that are on those shelves, and some of them involve some other adult books. But we are exploring this idea of tsundoku, and we are having a lot of fun doing it. So if you haven't explored the Get Literate Patreon community yet, I urge you to do so. The link will be in the show notes, but you can head to getliterate.co and you can sign up for a free week to see if it's something that would set your reading and writing life on fire. And throughout the month of March, we've got a lot of fun planned. We've got some new downloads coming your way and some prizes too, to give us a little accountability and incentive to read our shelves. But that's something that I hope that you will join me with. But even if not, I do hope that you will let me know what your favorite middle grade novels are. You can tag me with a list of your favorites at Affinito Lit, or as always, you can head to alitlife.com and you can add your favorites in the show notes for this episode. So that's it for today. I always end these episodes by saying happy reading, but today I'm going to say happy middle grade reading, everyone. And I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing lives, like bonus podcast episodes, book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking challenges, live events, giveaways, and much more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all the previous content too. You can learn more at getliterate.co. But one more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish and notebookish community too. Thanks so much for listening.